It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Welcome in to Take Command. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen, and today is Mock Draft 2.0 Logan, which feels more appropriate than it should. This is also recording 2.0 of this podcast. How much do we want to peel back the curtain here?
Yeah, I mean, basically my computer just shut off in the middle and was like, I'm done being a computer. So I had to go get my wife's computer, and then we lost the file for the first one. So, here we are. This feels very redundant, almost like Groundhog Day. But, it's fun to be talking to you again, Craig. So
yeah, we joke that we just spend our days talking to each other about football. And boy, is it true today. My mic settings weren't right the first time. Yeah. The mock draft went haywire. Logan's computer went completely on the fritz. And I jokingly said, you want to know what? Instead of trying to salvage this, do you want to just do it again later? And Logan was like, yes, actually I do. So here we are, recording 2.0 of Mock Draft 2.0. But first, news we didn't anticipate, Logan. We got free agent news. Of course, free agency opens officially next week for 99% of the league, because that is when the league year ends/begins, and thus players actually become free agents because their contracts actually run out. But if you were a player who didn't have a contract by the end of last season, then you can sign immediately. And we've seen that in some cases. Mitch Trubisky actually just re-signed in Buffalo, where he was the backup for Josh Allen for a number of years. Pittsburgh cut him early so that he can go and figure out his future and get a head start. And so they did him that solid. And that was also the situation that Zach Ertz was in. He did not have a contract by the end of the regular season. I think the Lions added him for in the playoffs, for whatever game practice that was, squad. Practice squad or whatever, however they did it, so that he is a free agent now. And he has signed with the Washington Commanders. Veteran, obviously, great player for the Eagles, very, very good player for the Arizona Cardinals, where he was with Cliff Kingsbury, and the Washington Commanders bring him in. I know you've been watching a little bit of tape on Ertz. You two also share an agent, tight end super agent, Steve Carrick, as it was framed by NFL Network's Tom Pelissero when he broke the news. But so what do you make of this signing first on the field? Do they just get their starting tight end, or is that a little bit too strong?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to contribute. I think, when you go back to 2021, when he first got to Arizona, he looked awesome, man. He looked really, really fantastic. And so obviously, Cliff leaves, and then last year, and then he hurts his knee, and kind of playing last year in 2023, I think there was this kind of expectation that, he's 33 years old. He's kind of near the tail end of his career. How good's the film going to be? But I think going through it, I think you still see the stuff that he's excellent at. You still see that he's got this great 5-yard burst. He anticipates the snap count really well. He gets in the defenses at a high level. He does a great job with his speed cuts, understanding how to be friendly out of cuts, using his body to kind of create space. He's a future Hall of Fame guy potentially, so he gets away with some kind of offensive PI stuff, but I like it. He knows he can do it, right? That's how Jason Witten was near the end of his career. And the other thing, he's got the dark arts, kind of that gray area of a route. Don't run it like it's drawn on a paper. Run it to get open, run it to find space. And, he's excellent at that, So I do think that, kind of coming into this process, when I saw the signing, I wasn't sure how dynamic it was going to be. But I think today, after watching some film, watching all of his targets versus man-to-man coverage, I say, okay, he's going to have a role here. And it's going to be nice that Cliff knows what he does well and knows how to maximize him, because he was very successful in 2021. I thought kind of revitalized his career almost. So starting, probably not. I'll probably be a rotational piece, maybe a 50% snap kind of guy, 60% snap kind of guy, your third down guy, red zone, pass catching guy. Bates will be the blocking Y. But I do think he's definitely going to have a role, and I think he probably ends up catching between 40 and 55 balls this year. So,
hey, that'd be a heck of a productive season for Zach Ertz. That'd be a great addition. And obviously, if we anticipate a young quarterback being here, having that veteran tight end who knows how to get open, that can reliably get open, is a huge best friend. Then the question, I guess, becomes would you be pursuing someone else in free agency? Would you be looking in this draft, or you just hope that the combination of Bates is the Y, Ertz in the role you described, and then Armani Rogers coming back from injury, or maybe even Cole Turner? Can he finally put it together outside of a preseason? Is that your tight end room, or are you looking to add at least one more body to duke it out for roster spots?
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's some questions. Obviously, I think you can develop Armani, you could develop Cole Turner. I think they've at times during their tenure have shown potential, and they've also shown to become somewhat disappointed. One is play related, one's injury related, and I think that when you look at this, I think you could reasonably go into the season and develop those guys. But I also think that it's important to note that if they were to sign someone else, I wouldn't be mad at it. If they were to draft somebody else, I wouldn't be mad at it, because ultimately you're looking to kind of compile a group of the best football players you can. And so, again, when you go back to 2021, when Cliff was in Arizona, he got into using a lot of 13 personnel, right? He'd use Zach as kind of this movable chess piece, this X. They had Trey McBride. I don't know if Trey McBride was the guy. I think he got there in 2022. But they had two other guys there that could do some stuff in line and catch footballs. And Cliff talked about this pretty extensively in his press conferences, like when he was first signed here, about using personnel to create mismatches. And I think that's what a more dynamic, stronger tight end room would give you. So if they were to sign somebody, great. And I want good football players here. And if they want to develop those two young guys, I think great, because I think both of them have shown tremendous potential, just about whether they can actualize it.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll see there. I think the last part of this I want to talk about real quick is kind of the bigger picture. They bring in a guy who's got familiarity with Cliff. Zach Ertz's reputation as like a human being is A+. Both him and Julie, his wife, obviously a legendary athlete in her own right. But I've just heard they're wonderful, wonderful people. I met Zach once at one of Julie's games way back when.
Oh, really?
Have been nicer. Yeah. He's like, I've heard nothing but good things. And so between the familiarity with Cliff and kind of that human personality, that seems like a great fit with kind of leader that Dan Quinn wants. I also think this kind of coincides with, not that Charles Leno's not a great dude. He was the Walter Payton Man of the Year, nominee last year. Not that Logan Thomas isn't a good dude as well, but like those two guys that were louder voices in the last couple of years in the last regime, those guys were primarily obviously cut because financially that made immense amounts of sense. And their play level was not up to the cap hit that they were going to incur, and you could save a lot of money by releasing them. So they did. But I also think that you take two guys that were leaders and you're like, hey, thanks a lot. See ya. Not here. We'll see if you come back as a visitor, and you sign a guy like Ertz. To me, this is kind of the first step in transforming the leadership as they try to establish their new culture in this era as well.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. Like I talk about my time in San Francisco, like Kyle brought me in 2017, not because I was the best tight end on the market, but because like I knew what his standard was, what his mode of operation was, and I could enforce that and kind of bring that standard of play to that tight end group and to the offense. Like he could kind of point and say, this is how we do things. And I think, again, having that relationship with Cliff is extremely important. I think it also helps that he was like a Hall of Fame candidate here coming up here soon. I think having someone like that, like you said, who's a good person, that people can point to and say, because obviously we share an agent, and Zach's work ethic is legendary. His obsession about being the best version of himself is like kind of on par of that, like Michael Jordan. Those stories you hear about Michael Jordan, just the chip and like the compulsive behavior about finding every avenue to be just the best he can be is pretty fantastic. So I think having someone like that here is just good for the culture, right? And I do think he's going to be a productive player, but he's definitely not the player he once was. But I do think the value, like you're alluding to, stems from this relationship, that we can kind of use him as a pillar to help understand like what we're looking for from a vision standpoint for the Washington Commanders moving forward.
No doubt. And then, the last piece of it too is the language barrier that you tend to have with new offenses. Zach obviously played under Doug Peterson in Philly, that same Andy Reid West Coast tree. He played for Cliff. And while Cliff has said like the offense is not going to be the same as it has been in the past, I'm not going to do air raid, whatever he says, I'm assuming he's going to use the same language that he's used in the past. And so having someone that's played in the same like tree, Eric Bieniemy's, same language that Andy and Doug and all those guys use, and also Cliff, I'd imagine that's probably a very helpful piece to have in the room as well. I mean, you could speak to that certainly better than I can. The language barriers of different offenses, because like it's a lot of the same concepts, it's the same routes. Maybe there's different teaching points, and sometimes that can be hard to remember. Like, wait, is this supposed to be run at 8 or 10? Like, do we plant here, plant there, whatever? But the language barrier is typically the biggest learning curve. And having a guy who speaks both languages, if you will, it seems like a good vet to have in, especially at the tight end position where he touches blocking schemes, he touches routes, he touches the pass game, touches the run game, touches everything.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's helpful. Again, I think the familiarity with Cliff is going to be more substantial. I think just in terms of being like, oh, this is, I think, what Cliff's looking for here. Like, I remember having conversations with guys in the tight end room when I was in San Fran about, oh, like, this is how we want, this was the coaching point before, like, this is how we kind of visualize this. And then they'd kind of put it in their own language, their own terminology. But I think, again, just having some context there. And like you said, I think this is a great point. Just getting a guy who's going to uphold a high standard, and just a good dude, uphold a high standard and be someone they can point to as like, this is what we want commanders of the future to be looking like. So.
Yep. So Zach Ertz, that's the news. Obviously, plenty of more free agent news next week. The way we're going to handle that on this podcast is we're going to have Logan come on the radio show because the live nature of the breaking news. If there's something big that pops on Monday, we'll try to get Logan on Monday, and same thing Tuesday. And then kind of by the time things settle down, we'll have a new, if there's multiple news items, we'll sit down, do a full length pod, react to the free agency news, but it's going to move fast and furious next week. So make sure you're tuned in on the Team 980. One other piece of news before we get to Mock Draft 2.0, I'll remind you about this a couple more times throughout the podcast, but we have a new home on YouTube. Team 980 is where the full pod is going to live now. Obviously, that is my home radio station. We love 106.7 The Fan as well. We've done simulcast there. A lot of our free agency coverage will cross over. So Logan will still appear on The Fan. I'll still appear on The Fan as a guest at times. But we're going to move now that the Team 980 YouTube page is fully up and kicking. We're going to move full episodes of this podcast over to the Team 980. So make sure you're subscribed at the Team 980 for Take Command. Speaking of the pod on YouTube, if you're gotten this far listening on your podcast app, now would be a good time to go fire up your TV or your iPad or whatever, because we're going into the war room for Mock Draft 2.0 next. It is time for Take Command Mock Draft 2.0. Logan Paulsen. Again, if you are listening on the podcast app of your choice, full episode of this is on YouTube, and you can see the war room. We got it pulled up here on YouTube at the Team 980. And we have gone ahead and we're going to use Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator for this one. Just to get a little bit of a different feel. Typically, we've used PFF, but we're going to go Pro Football Network for this one. We got Caleb Williams already on the board for Chicago, and that puts Washington on the clock at 2, Logan. And we've been talking about Drake May versus Jaden Daniels a lot. In our first mock draft, we selected Jaden Daniels, but as we watch more tape, we've gone to the combine. I tend to think that we're probably going to wind up taking the quarterback from North Carolina, but talk us through where you're at as you're our lead GM, lead decision maker here.
Yeah, so I think for me, obviously, Drake May is a guy that I think I was not very high on when we started the process, and Jaden was a guy that was just so dynamic. Obviously, the best player in college football, so his ability to extend plays, to create off schedule, to run, to hit like one of the most beautiful deep balls you'll see in the draft class, I think is very intoxicating. But I think when you look at Drake May, there's just a consistency and a transferability, if that's even a word, to the NFL game that Jaden doesn't have. And so what I mean by that is when you look at his big time throw ratio, big time throws to sack ratio, pressure to sack ratio, throws over the middle of the field, big time throws over the middle of the field, like all of those numbers favor Drake May pretty dramatically. And again, I'm not saying that I understand that like they're different football players, and Jaden Daniels, finds explosive plays outside of just throwing the football. Like he runs, and that's another way he beats blitzes and does that kind of stuff. But I just think the way that you can obviously see Drake May looking at the field, the way he handles protections, it seems like an easier jump to say he projects better to the NFL level. And this is not to me say that I still don't like Jaden Daniels. I still like him quite a bit, but I just think Drake May is I don't want to say safer, but it just seems like a more NFL ready product. And I think his talent is tremendous. I think the way he throws the football is very dramatic. I've talked about how I don't think his arm strength is quite Justin Herbert-esque, but I think it's still pretty gosh darn good. So I think all of those things just kind of continue to stack up in his favor. And so I think that's the pick at 2, quite honestly.
Yeah. So the thing that I think still gets me when I watch Jaden and Drake that like emotionally pulls me towards Jaden, and I have to pull myself out of, is Like, it just feels so rhythmic. And I feel like he has a great feel for the pocket, and he just, like, the ball gets where it's supposed to be, generally speaking, on time. And then you have to kind of think about, okay, well, what are the circumstances that you're playing in? And this is why you watch the all 22 and not just the game tape where it's like, oh, well, that was easy. That was easy. That was easy. And it's like, yeah, he's got a good offensive line, talking about Jaden Daniels, a good offensive line in front of him. He's got, Brian Thomas Jr., who was 209 pounds and ran a 4.36, I think, at the combine.
It looked really good, yeah.
On one side, and facing typically a team's second best corner, because he's got Malik Neighbors, who's probably going to go in the top 6 picks on the other side.
Right.
Like, and it's really easy to be on time and on target when your first read is almost always open. And so I think that, and then you watch like an all 22 of, Drake's last college game versus NC State, and it's a mess for everybody that's not named him. You got guys dropping passes, the offensive line's losing quickly. He throws 2 picks in the game that hit receivers in the hands. And, I think you look at all that stuff and you just go, okay, well, this is more complicated than that's really pretty, TV copy that you kind of start the process with. And so I think as I've gone through it, that's why I find myself leaning towards Drake with this pick. And I agree with you. I do struggle sometimes with, the mechanics and the footwork and stuff with May, but I also understand the circumstances that he's playing in, also the pressure he was under because their defense wasn't very good. Yeah. And I think Caleb obviously has that to an extreme as well. When we're talking about what Chicago's considering, but that is like my one big thing where I fall back to Jaden Daniels and I'm like, man, but the rhythm and the timing, sometimes when it's good, man, it looks so good. And I feel like there are fewer stretches of that with Drake on tape. But also you understand why, because that is very circumstantial versus the stuff that you're talking about, that you fight through that adversity, make these throws, and that's the stuff that you're going to have to do in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think, again, like I like Jane Daniels a lot, but I do think the thing is, like, it's the complexity of the offense isn't there the same way, right? And it's not like, North Carolina is this crazy, complicated, nuanced offense, but there is this kind of like simplicity to what he does. And again, he's on rhythm. And then the other thing that kind of gets me is, like, there were opportunities in college football with Jane Daniels where there are what I would consider NFL open throws that he's turning down, he's running. And I don't want to knock him for throwing to good receivers, and I don't want to knock him for speaking to his skill set. But I do feel like I've seen guys that have that ability turn down NFL open stuff and never develop as a passer, right? And like Lamar is, I think, a good example of a guy who's developed in that way and people get excited about, but he's an exception. He's not the rule. And so that's something I keep going back to, is like, do I think he can develop? And I just want to point this out too, and I point this out on every single show. Every time we talk about these quarterbacks, it's a projection business, right? It's a projection business. So what is the most likely outcome for these two athletes at the NFL level? And right now, I do think Drake May feels a little bit less risky from what you've seen on film. But I just watched a podcast that I thought was fascinating, because they're like, don't let the production trick you, right? It's the traits, it's the guy, it's the interview. And to me, I think the most important element is where they're going. Like, I'm pretty confident to say whatever one of these 3 guys ends up in New England is not going to have a good year. Like, I'm very confident in saying that. And maybe they have a terrible career because they get cooked too early or whatever. But what has Washington done to support either Drake May or Jaden Daniels? And that becomes the major question for me moving forward, is this team good enough to sustain, to foster growth at a young quarterback? And I don't know. That's why Adam Peters is making all that money. But I will say that when you watch Drake May, the types of throws you're seeing are more NFL translatable. Like I've said this before, go watch a Drake May highlight. Just go type in Drake May highlights, North Carolina 2023. You'll see throws over the middle of the field. You'll see fades. You'll see comebacks. You'll see timing throws. You'll see off-schedule stuff. With Jaden Daniels, you see explosive runs and you see box fades. Some of the most beautiful box fades you've ever seen thrown in your whole life, but that is not viable consistently at the NFL level. And can he do more? Potentially, but I just see more transferable stuff from Drake May. And he's a good athlete. He's a good leader. Interviews went well. That was kind of the scuttlebutt coming out of the combine. So I'm going to lean that way for this pick.
Oh, but there's one more thing we have to consider, Logan.
Oh, what is that, Craig?
Do you hear that noise? Do you hear that?
No, what is that?
Fainting. Ring, ring. Ring. Yes, it's the trade phone going off. Now, Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator actually does often offer you trades, but I'm gonna play opposing GMs calling in here for a second. Logan, Paulson, Peters, and I'm gonna make you some offers here. Hello, it's Tom Telesco here from the Las Vegas Raiders. And I have a trade offer for you. This was offered to me. Actually, I got this idea from the Hoffman Show. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a radio show there in D.C. And one of our guys here in Vegas, Q Myers, was a guest on it. And I actually liked their trade proposition. So I got 13 for you in this draft. I got my first rounder next year. I got my second rounder this year and next year. And also Hunter Renfrow. I know you need a slot receiver. Can I interest you in that package for the second pick?
I would be interested, but they're picking at 14, right?
13.
That seems a little bit too low for me to go because I'm not going to get a quarterback that I want, or the quarterback that I want. And I might not even get the fourth quarterback at that spot. So you would need to probably add another third rounder for me and maybe another pick this year. Drop Hunter Renfrow. I don't care about him. Let's get some draft capital so we can make big moves moving forward. That's kind of how I feel about it.
All right. Thanks for considering Adam, Logan, Paulson, Peters.
Yes. Right.
And I hope you good luck with whatever you do. There's another AFC Wester on the phone. Ring. Denver Broncos calling. Hey, it's Sean Payton here. That North Carolina quarterback. He's all I've dreamed about at night for 3 months. I'd really like him. I'll give you 3 firsts. And then we can talk about, what else we got. But I'm gonna offer you 3 firsts here as the meat of this trade. Would you consider?
I would definitely. That is something I definitely would consider. 3 firsts, maybe a couple seconds, maybe an extra pick this year. And again, where are they? They're picking 12?
It's 12. I don't have a second rounder that I can offer you this year. Sorry about that. But I'll offer you 12. If you want 81, we can talk about that. But then I'll give you my first and second next year. And we'll do 12 and 81, first and second this year, and then first and third in 26.
That's something I would definitely kick the tires on. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, Craig. I mean, you're also, you're in the war room with me. We're talking through this. That seems like a pretty steep bag for me. And I still have the opportunity to trade back up and maybe get the fourth quarterback or even Jaden Daniels if he were to slide a little bit. So that's something I definitely would kick the tires on.
I would also kick the tires on that, in part because, like you said, potentially trade back up. It obviously depends. Do I love Drake May?
Right.
If I love Drake May like Nate Tice loves Drake May, there's not a package basically that you can give me because Nate thinks he's one of the best prospects of the last 10 years. And there's not a price for that. But that said, I also look at Denver and I'm like, I don't think you're going to be that good if Drake May is your starter this year. Right. And that's kind of, you're looking at either a Jared Stidham holdover or a Drake May this year. They just had to cut Justin Simmons. Like their cap's a mess. Sean Payton's a really good coach and got them playing good ball by the end of last year, but I don't know how good that football team's going to be. So I'm looking at that in the way that Chicago looked at Carolina last year potentially. So I would kick the tires on that. But I think for the purposes of mock draft 2.0, we say, hey, Sean, you're a crazy man. Thank you. Click.
Yep.
And we just go, let's take Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina, and call it a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. There we go. All right, Logan. So Drake May on the board for Washington. That's the pick. So let's hit play here on the rest of the first round and see kind of what emerges here. Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Joe Alt, Malik Neighbors, Olu Fashanu, Jaden Daniels falls to 8. Dallas Turner, Brock Byers, Latu, Terrion Arnold, Troy Fontenot, McCarthy falls all the way to 14. Verse, Latham, Brian Thomas Jr., Talisi Fuaga, Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean makes it in the first round. Byron Murphy Jr., Kenron Mitchell, Amarius Mims, Jackson Powers Johnson, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Chopped Robinson, Leonard Taylor, Adonai Mitchell, Graham Burton, Xavier Worthy, Kamari Lassiter, and Keon Coleman. So you have a little bit of a run on wide receivers there. You have a guy like Tyler Guyton fall, Kingsley Suamataia makes it out of the first round in this mock. I actually think like if the board falls like this for Washington, this is in many ways, I think, an ideal situation for them heading into the second round with some of the, obviously there's some interesting guys that you'd be like, I don't know if that guy fell and everyone else didn't. I would love to have him, but I think the right positions are falling if the draft falls this way. And I think wide receiver kind of holds the key here if there's a heavy run like there is in this version of this mock draft.
Yeah, and I do think a lot of these guys will probably go in the first round, but like Kamari Lassiter making it in the first round is a little bit surprising to me, especially after his Senior Bowl and his combine. Like, I don't know if that's realistic, right? And then, Leonard Taylor from Miami, I don't think is a first round player, but like this happens in the combine. There's always a surprise first round player, and like the consensus is a little bit different on a lot of these guys. But I do think the top of this draft, probably through the first 20 picks, feels very, very authentic to kind of what the consensus is in the draft community and what you hear from people coming out of the combine, right? Like, I think that's right on. But again, you're going to get some surprise first round players. It's going to bump some good players down to Washington. I think you feel very excited about it.
All right. So Carolina on the clock at 32. Let's go. Second round. We got 36 and 40 to pick for Washington. And I have a feeling there's going to be some trades to consider. Darius Robinson, Bo Nix, Cooper Beebe come up as the picks. So Darius Robinson, I think there was a dream there for us that he would fall to 36. He does not. Bo Nix becomes QB5. So Penix still on the board. Obviously took Drake May, so not considered there. Then we got 2 trade offers coming in. I didn't even have to fake the bat phone this time. Cincinnati's offering 49 and a second next year for 36 and 220. And then the Giants are offering 39 and 108 for 36 and 220.
39 and 108.
Here, we can hide those and come back to them. So best available according to Pro Football Network right now: Johnny Newton, Tyler Guyton, Penix, Kingsley Suamataia.
Stop reading.
Yeah.
You take Tyler Guyton right here.
Yeah.
I don't think you even think twice about it. I think
I agree.
First round player. He falls to you at 36. He fills a need. I think he's a young, hungry guy. You watch him at the Senior Bowl. Like, love the energy, love the athleticism, move well at the combine. I don't think you even think twice about that. I think you sprint that up there. So
it's too risky to try to trade down to 39 and pick up that second pick. It's just, you take the guy. Let's pretend for a second he's not on the board. He had gone in one of those other places where like a defensive tackle went. Between Suamataia, Jordan Morgan, Christian Haynes out of UConn, Patrick Paul. Like, if those are the options for you, what's the pick?
Go to edge real quick. Is there an edge opportunity?
Darius Robinson fell off the board. Chop Robinson's off the board. So your best one's Adisa Isaac or Chris Broswell out of Alabama?
Yeah, I think both those guys are good players, but I'm very high on like Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. I think he'll be available a little bit later. So for me, it's offensive line here. And I think if Guyton's not there, I think Suamataia is an outstanding football player. And I think he is very raw, but the athleticism that you see with him gets you very excited. He's moving around at the combine, kind of like a power forward. And, one of the things I've always been a big advocate of is like those elite offensive linemen, they have to have tremendous feet. And Guyton, Suamataia, they have tremendous feet, tremendous athleticism. Jordan Morgan is a guy that I like a lot, but I think there's a toughness element that I'd like to see more of. And then Christian Haynes, I think, is a heck of a football player. But, for me, positional value with guard, I'm not sure if I'm a big guard guy. I feel like this organization's been hungry for that tackle spot for a long time. But again, if you've got a free agent tackle that you've picked up, then I think Christian Haynes would be an outstanding pick here. I think he's physical. I think he's aggressive. I think his mindset's correct. The small school element of it is a little bit of a concern, but I like him as a football player. But I'd probably go Tyler Guyton here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's the pick. Just, it doesn't feel realistic. Maybe they get lucky. So I figured it was worth chopping up the other offensive lineman. So Tyler Guyton is the pick. Then we'll be back up in just a moment. TJ Tampa, Trey Benson, and Braylon, who's this? Braylon Trice, the edge out of Washington, are the next 3 picks before we're on the board again. And ring, there's the trade phone at 40. So the Giants are offering 47 and 70 for 40 and 103. The Texans offering 59 and their second next year for 40. I'm much more interested in the Giants trade, I believe.
Yeah, I think the getting the picks this year, I think, feels more realistic for a team that is, still trying to fill some stuff out. So I think that this feels a little bit more appetizing than the first trades we looked at for 36, because that 70th pick is in the top 90. And I do think there are a lot of good football players in the top 90 of this draft. So I think trading back, 7 spots, and having the opportunity to potentially draft a third down running back or receiver at 70, I don't hate that. Again, there's some good football players here. Jordan Morgan, Christian Haynes, Ladd McConkey's excellent, but I think I would feel comfortable trading back from this spot.
Yeah, I think I'd accept this. I'd move back 7 spots for a spot or a chance to move up 33 with that next pick, because that gives us 47, 70, or 67 and 70.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit accept on that. So they take Zach Frazier. See a little bit of a run on lineman. Penix, McConkey go. Haynes goes. Now Bengals are like, hey, do you want to pick up 196 to trade back to?
Can we see who's available right now?
Yep, sure can. Your best overall players still got Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle out of Illinois.
Yeah.
Tyler Nubin, the safety out of Minnesota. T'Vondre Sweat, a defensive tackle out of Texas.
Can you go to defense real quick?
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so lots of really good defensive football players here. A guy that catches your eye here that will not be this low is Peyton Wilson from NC State. He's the 46th player ranked right now. He's a guy that I could see being a tremendous value here for Washington if you're looking for that guy. Again, I'm really high on Kingsley Suamataia, so part of me is like, shoot, take Tyler Guyton and have Kingsley Suamataia play guard, and you'll figure it out because you just got
kick Wiley inside. I don't know that you want 2 rookie tackles protecting a rookie quarterback, but
I'm saying just to have that, you don't see athletes like that very often. But again, to that same point, you don't see athletes like Peyton Wilson very often either. And again, this draft has him at 64. That doesn't feel right. I think he's going to be a top half of the second round guy. I think he'll be the first linebackers selected in this one. They had Edgerrin Cooper go to Las Vegas. The linebacker from Texas A&M, who again feels like a guy that Dan Quinn might like a little bit more because he's got some edge rusher to his frame. His 10-yard burst is excellent. He's got long arms. He's got a pass rusher type build, but good off ball player. But if in terms of value here for the defensive side of the ball for a defensive head coach that's not on the interior of the defensive line. Obviously, you got Michael Hall Jr., Chris Jenkins here. Those guys are defensive tackles with high upside. I would probably say Peyton Wilson here would be a pretty again in the value here is not necessarily there because of how this board falls. Also, Chris Braswell's a guy that I think is pretty dynamic as well.
So let me see if I can appeal to the inner Logan Paulson here.
Sure.
Can I interest you in JT Sanders, the tight end out of Texas?
Jatavian Sanders. So I think the thing I'm running into with him, I think he's very talented. It's just what does his use package look like? I don't think he ran as well as people thought at the combine. He runs a very vertical route tree, and usually the tight ends that are successful run stuff underneath, like Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz, name your guy. The only guy that runs a semblance of this is Kyle Pitts from Atlanta, obviously now, who ran a 4.4 coming out and is 6'6". Jatavian Sanders is not that level of athlete. So while I am excited by him, I think you've done the right thing if you're Adam Peters of signing Zach Ertz, so you don't have to reach on a tight end at that position.
All right. Well, in that case, then let's go Peyton Wilson, linebacker, NC State. Yeah. Call in the pick. And you don't want. I don't want to mess with that. I just want to take him. I don't want to mess around with someone. Getting picked 196 doesn't do it for me. Yeah. Sorry, Bengals. Don't call us back.
Heck of a football player.
All right. So then a couple of those guys at the top of the board remaining get selected as we move our way on down towards pick 67. So you got some safeties, some receivers that go, some of the linemen.
Patrick Paul. Yeah.
Patrick Paul goes. So you get into the third round now, and you are at pick 67, Logan. If they don't go linebacker, earlier in the draft, could you see Junior Colson, obviously here, the linebacker out of Michigan, Cedric Gray out of North Carolina, some of the names to consider. But it seems like receiver still obviously an option, which is going to be throughout all of this draft. There's a couple speedsters. There's a couple bigger guys. Yeah. If you want to look at running back here, we can definitely.
So when's our next pick? When's the next pick?
Now we're up at 67 here, and then there's another one at 70.
So 70. So the guy that sticks out to me just from when you scroll through that list is Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. He looks like a guy that the 70th player. I forgot where he just was, but 76. He's a guy that I think has just had a tremendous offseason process. Looked great at the Senior Bowl. His combine was great. I know he didn't test very well, but his field work, the way he moves, was awesome. He's a bigger guy. He's 270 pounds. He's got good power, inside, outside flexibility, and he plays with a motor that just won't quit, man. Just will not quit. So When you're looking for an edge guy that fills a need, that can drop and has some flexibility, that's a guy that jumps out. You mentioned receiver. I mean, there are thousands of receivers here that you get really excited about. Can you go to the offense real quick? I just want to see if there's any running back that you kind of like are really blown away with. Probably not.
I mean, I think Blake Corum and Bucky Irving are two of the names that you hear some guys having is like RB1 type of talent. So if
I would probably bypass that. Yeah.
Yeah. If that's your style, then it seems like a good pick here. If not, I'd probably go. I mean, there's some of the wide receivers that are like burners that I'm definitely interested in. But also, I mean, like Roman Wilson ran really well.
Xavier Legette is a horse.
Legette has been, if you want to get your guy as teammate, you could go Tez Walker. I don't know that that's the way I would go.
I mean, dude can straight fly, man. And his explosive measurements at the combine were absolutely off the charts. I mean, I think he jumped 42
McMillan
inches.
was super productive.
Yeah,
at Washington.
It's crazy. Go to offensive guard real quick, just briefly. Let's see what's going on there. Oh, Christian Mahogany. That's very interesting, man. Boston College, straight mauler. And I do think there is a drop off. I think he's kind of like the last, although I do like Layden Robinson from Texas A&M quite a bit, but I do think that like he's like the last kind of, he was a former first round like kind of pick candidate last year before coming back to school. Good football player, but I'd probably go Nealand here. Honestly, I think he's that good. And again, my evaluation's a little bit different than what they have here, but I like him quite a bit.
All right, so Marshawn Nealand, the edge out of Western Michigan, is who will pick at 67. Obviously, we acquired pick 70 via trade. The Bears are offering 75 and 111 for 70 and our third rounder next year. No, that seems like a very stupid trade. Yes?
Reject.
Okay, good. Glad we're on the same page there. All right, so then Brandon Dorlus, the edge out of Oregon, and Tavondre Sweat, the defensive tackle out of Texas, are the two players that went off the board in between picks here, which leaves us, to me, now we're in wide receiver territory, probably.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Braden Fisk is still on the board here just shows how broken this thing is at the moment. Like, he is going to go much higher than this. And just from a value standpoint, I think he would almost be impossible to pass up. But again, you have two defensive tackles. Like, I don't know.
And you spent a second rounder on Big Phil.
Yeah, but this guy is I love the way he plays. He plays hard. Talk about a Dan Quinn guy, like just a motor that won't stop. Imagine him and Marshawn Nealand on the same defensive line, just chasing people down for days. Like, that would be a lot of fun to watch. Scroll to the top of this list, please. Malachi Corley, he's awesome, man. And again, I think there's a lot of good receivers. Scroll down a little bit, Craig. There's a guy on here that I thought was interesting. Again, if you don't draft a receiver, Cole Bishop from Utah, he reminds me of like he ran a 4.4. He plays all over the field, plays linebacker, plays post. So in terms of like movable chess piece at safety that's got some traits athletically, that's a guy that really sticks out to you too. So I think there's a lot of good football players here. And I think that's the value of getting that extra player in the top 90, because I think he'll come in and play a lot of good football for you. So it's really, I kind of leave it to you, Craig, like the direction you want to go here, because I think.
Oh no, we've left the Hoffman portion of the draft board. These are Paulson prospects at this point. I mean, I definitely recognize plenty of the names. Some of the guys that we've been talking about as potential picks in this range, obviously, 70 is a pick we fake acquired here, but 67, but you know them, them far better than I do.
I would, oh gosh. Again, Malachi Corley's awesome. Ben Sinnott from Kansas State.
I'm going to take Fisk off the board if you think it's that unrealistic.
I think that's totally unrealistic. But again, I think he's a borderline first round player after the combine. So that's just to give you some context there.
Yeah.
So like they haven't adjusted this, obviously. And then the receivers, there's a million receivers. We'll get one in the fourth round if this is how the board looks. Scroll down a little bit. Gosh, yeah. I think I don't like safety, but with this kind of luxury pick, I would probably go Cole Bishop.
You'd like that over a third down running back?
Who's available? Let's just check that out real quick. Let's just totally nerd out. Will Shipley scroll down a little bit. So like Dylan Laub is an excellent third down running back. Jalen Wright is a guy that I would consider taking here. I know he's 117, but dude ran a 4.37 at the combine, jumped 40 inches, led the NCAA in explosive runs. Ray Davis is an excellent football player. Marshawn Lloyd will not be this low on this list. So like what I'm saying is like Isaac Guendero ran a 4.3 and jumped 40 inches. Like, no way he's there, right? So basically what I'm saying is, looking at this list, if those guys are still available, you can get a running back in the 4th round if that's how this looks, right? So
right.
I would not jump the gun here. I think.
And by the way, we have another pick that we're going to make at 101 before this thing's done.
Yes, now I'm talking. That's what we're talking about. Okay, yeah. So let's go safety here. I like that.
Let's go safety. Let's where'd he go? Let's take Cole Bishop out of Utah. Bang, done. And now you see some of the receivers go. Corley, Wilson, Sanders finally goes the tight end out of Texas. Spencer Rattler making an appearance. His teammate
Xavier Leggett's such a Seattle pick. Mahogany, that's a Steeler pick all day.
Let's see what else we got. Any of these big names? Johnny Wilson, who's super intriguing because of his size, out of Florida State.
Dude, I like him going to Green Bay. That'd be a nice fit for him.
I see a couple of the running backs start to come off the board, like Braylon Allen. Do you want to trade back 2 spots to add 185? No, because then we don't get to make a pick, because this is a 3-round mock draft and this is the last pick of the 3rd round. Blake Corum comes off the board right before.
Wait, is that right? Kieran Amadiji is still on the board? No way that happens, but I would take him here for sure.
You take that second tackle?
So I think he's a guy that can play guard. He played at Yale. Obviously smaller school prospect, but holy cow, that dude can fly. He's got I think he measured 35.5-inch arms. So like, I don't know, man. Like, I like freaky athletic guys, and he's a smart guy. Obviously went to Yale. You worry a little bit about his lack of like total dominance at that level, but I think he's a 2nd round player. So the fact he's sitting here, I'm just like, probably should draft him. You know what I'm saying? Like, It just feels like the right pick. I don't think he goes this low, but what else we got? We got, I
know Cade Stover, tight end out of Ohio State, just sounds like the Big Ten tight end. He sounds like the kind of guy that you're like, oh yeah, tight end Cade Stover.
Go to tight end real quick. Let's talk through that real quick. So Theo Johnson will go higher than this, but he ran a 4.5 at the combine. He's 6'6", 260. Jared Wiley is super smooth, also 6'6". Talk about a guy that can play wide.
Obviously it's Eric All. He's the tight end out of Iowa. You always take the tight end out of Iowa. Haven't we learned anything?
Saying, and I didn't really like Cade's workout at the combine, so I was a little bit off of that. So I probably wouldn't go tight end here. I might go Jared Wiley, honestly, because I like him that much. But I think if the kid from Yale is there, like that is insane to me, because he's such an athletic freak with so much upside. Like, you'd probably take a shot on that. You know what I mean?
All right, let's do it. Can you say his name one more time?
No. Amadiji. That's what I'm going to go with.
I'm going to go Amagaji.
Amagaji? I like that better. There was a pronunciation sheet.
We sincerely apologize. But Logan loves your film.
I do love your film. Yes.
Draft. So that means we come out of this draft with Drake May, Tyler Guyton, Peyton Wilson, Marshawn Nealon, Cole Bishop, Kieran Amagaji.
Dude, this would be fantastic. And I mean, there's a lot of good football players that I'm still getting to in terms of watching, but Tyler Guyton, I mean, Tyler Guyton's upside. Peyton Wilson, I think, playing like a will linebacker. Again, I don't think he's a true Mike, but dude can flat fly. He can cover the slot. I think he's got a lot of ability. Marshawn Nealon, his film, dude, he just never gives up on a play. And I just want to bet on a guy who's got a good athletic profile that never gives up on football plays. Cole Bishop, the flexibility he gives you, the intelligence he brings, he can blitz. Again, he's playing in the box. He's playing deep. He's got really short arms. I think his arms are like 29 inches, so like crazy short arms. But he's got this nice athletic dexterity. And then if Amadiji is there at 101, I know he's developmental, but like I want to take shots on guys with good traits, good frame that I think can grow into something pretty. Like, he could grow into a Pro Bowl caliber guard, which is crazy to say. Like, that's the type of athlete you're talking about. And I don't think he is here, but if he is, that'd be an awesome pick.
I mean, to me, there's just so many players where you're like, this guy isn't here, that like there's an overwhelming number of them, to the point that some of them are going to be there.
That's true.
And that's the nature of this draft, is like it is top heavy in multiple ways. Like, there's kind of an early wave top heavy, and then like a top 90 top heavy. And it does make you hope that there's some little baby trade downs that make you add another pick in that top 90 in the same way that we were able to. I mean, I did a couple other ones of these, just messing around with the simulator, and times I wound up with like 7 players and 2 picks, like 2 future picks, second rounders in the future. So there's ways to do this, and like one of them I was able to trade down, I think, to 7 out of 2 and still get Jaden Daniels and so like who knows? And that's kind of the fun of doing this is, obviously we hope that as we get closer, some of these mock draft simulators tighten up a little bit and, but then again, they tighten up and then they don't wind up being the right thing on draft day. So to see the different ways that this could go down is always fun. And we get to talk about a bunch of different players, but this definitely feels at this point like it'd be a huge win for the Washington Commanders if they can walk out with May, Guyton, and not have to trade up back into the back end of the first round for Guyton.
Yeah, and then get some pieces on the defensive side of the ball that I think, again, I'm always looking for guys, especially later in the draft, like third, fourth round guys that you think could project to starting roles. I think that's Cole Bishop and that's Peyton Wilson. Peyton Wilson's a second round pick, but the two guys we got later, Cole Bishop and Amadiji, like, holy cow, like I would be really excited about that opportunity.
No doubt. All right, so that is mock draft 2.0. It really felt like about 2.8 with the amount of restarts we had to do by the end, but those are stories for another day. For Logan Paulson, I'm Craig Hoffman. We'll see you next week, free agency style, here on Take Command.